The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. It's great to be here. It's great to have everybody on the show. There's been a lot going on in the news, and I know everybody's been stressed out, especially with the ongoing Ukraine situation. And we definitely have a story about that a little later on in the show, and we'll discuss that a little bit. But mainly, we want to make sure that everybody in those situations right now are able to get out, and the ones that aren't right now, that it's an escalated situation, that hopefully that there's some way that we can help them as this goes forward. But they are in our thoughts and prayers going forward. So it's an unfortunate situation, but we will talk a little bit about that later on in the show. But first, let's go ahead and jump into everything else. We've got our top news, so let's jump right into it. So, getting onto it right now, it seems to start out with the interesting story that across the pond we've got our international games lined up for next season. So, starting out, it appears that the Arizona Cardinals have been awarded the game in Mexico City, and the three London matchups, it appears that the Saints, the Green Bay Packers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have been awarded games there as well. And for the first time ever, in great interest, it appears that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be the first team to host a game in Munich, Germany. This is very exciting, especially that the NFL continues to share its brand across the nation and across the globe, mainly because simply this just opens up other opportunities for basically teams to expand in the league. It just shows that there is worldwide interest still. London continues to have interest in these games. That's why they continue to have them. It's nice to see that Mexico City continues to have them, but I was really a little disappointed. I would have liked to have seen another game in Ontario. Canada does really well in that market, and hopefully it's something they'll expand back on, hopefully. But I do think Munich's a nice addition, especially with NFL Euro, where it was especially popular, and you had a lot of draw there, especially in the German area. They're very big on football, so I'm very excited to see that actually expand there. So really, it's a situation I think the NFL is doing a good job of getting games out. We could possibly see them maybe in the next few years potentially go somewhere in South America, maybe even Australia. Maybe even possibly Japan could be an option. But, right now I think the NFL is doing well broadening out into Europe and in Mexico. But I would have liked to see another game in Canada. I think it does well in Canada. American football definitely seems to draw a pretty good crowd. And for most part, it seems that there's generally always going to be interest there. But I really feel, especially when you're trying to market your brand, the NFL does a very good job picking the best teams, especially in the lineups. I think right now you've got 5 teams that have a lot of interest right now. Arizona potentially was a Super Bowl contender. The Saints, the Packers, the Jaguars, all 3 of them going through different situations. But, we'll see as that goes forward. I think the Packers, if Aaron Rodgers does decide to stay, I think that'll be a pretty big draw there. I think with New Orleans, especially kind of starting over with a fresh head coach, I think that draws a little interest there as well. We'll see how the quarterback situation goes. And with the Jaguars, you have Doug Peterson taking over as head coach. You've got Trevor Lawrence as a young starting quarterback with a lot of great potential. So I think with the Jaguars, they're definitely a regular in London, and it seems like they're pushing for the Jaguars to go to London permanently, but they always tend to get a pretty good crowd, so it's no surprise the Jaguars went to London. So, also looking at the Munich game, I think the Bucs were an interesting choice there, especially I think if Tom Brady was willing to stay the next year, I think that probably would have been a bigger draw. But I do feel that it was a pretty good choice. Bruce Arians will try and figure out what they want to do going forward with quarterback. I think the Bucs have a lot of choices, especially in free agency, which is more than likely where they'll go. So along those lines, I think all 5 matchups are good. It'll be even more interesting to see when they get the schedule locked down. So I'd like to see what those matchups will be when the schedule does get released, but hopefully we'll see that eventually happen down the road, and it'll make for some pretty interesting TV. But speaking of TV, and of course, known as the Underwear Olympics, it'll be officially the first day of the NFL Combine starting tomorrow morning. And just about every GM and every scout and every head coach is going to be out there to see most of the players come out and try and put up some pretty decent numbers, especially from rushing and from drills and weightlifting scenarios. It's very interesting to me that the Combine continues to get a draw, especially in the off-season. To me, I've always felt it was interesting the NFL off-season continues to always pull in a nice crowd, especially people that are obsessed with finding more aspects and more draft notes for some of these young athletes. It's always interesting as well that you get to know from a better perspective of what these players are going to be and their personality. And I think the NFL Network does a pretty good job of covering that. So along those lines, you definitely have a situation where you're going to see a lot of these guys try and make the best of their situation, but then you're going to see a lot of players, especially in the higher rounds, opt out of the Combine and possibly just do their workout for their pro day when that tends to come. So, it's not going to be surprising to see some of the top 10 players on a lot of draft boards try and refuse competing in the Combine, and it's nothing normal at this point. I think especially they don't want to risk any injury or any chance of getting hurt, which it seems like for some of the players that does tend to happen. It's not a regular thing, but it's something that's very looked after. Especially when you've got a chance to shine at the highest stage, I think the Combine's really basically for the guys in the lower levels. Your guys that are going to be your top 10, top 15, or even top 20 guys, you're going to see plenty of them opt out. They're going to work their pro day. But for the NFL Combine, for some of these players that aren't going to have a chance to get looked at, especially after the Senior Bowl, this is a chance for them to show what they can do, what they can bring to the team. And especially anybody that had a strong showing in the Senior Bowl, this is even more of an opportunity to show that they could rise their stock. And it's happened plenty of times. There's many players out there that have had an opportunity to go out to the Combine that were possibly a lower third or fourth round pick and elevated themselves up to a second or even a late first. It's all about just persistence and really just showing the basic necessity of what a team needs. And as a player, as silly as it is to basically just get in, a cutoff and shorts and just run around doing drills and trying to just show that how much you can weightlift and how fast you can run. From the normal fan perspective, it seems silly, but for the ones that are really trying to look for value in the draft and looking for somebody that could potentially be a difference maker and a playmaker, this is their time to shine. So, for the next week, I'm really going to be trying to look at a lot more film on some of these guys. I'm going to try and gauge a little bit more activity going forward with the Combine. And to me, I really enjoy it. I think it's a situation, especially from a normal fan's perspective, you want to see what's going on out there, especially with some of these other guys you've heard of or maybe heard a little whispers about during the Senior Bowl. And if they get an opportunity to go out in the Combine, they're definitely worth checking out. So, I'll definitely be putting out some reports and whatnot of just what goes on throughout the week. There's definitely going to be stories of interest. And, of course, Rich Eisen's annual 40-yard dash, which I enjoy. And I'll definitely be enjoying that when he does decide to do it, whenever the date's set. But, the NFL Combine is going to be very interesting this year. A lot of great role players, a lot of great offensive tackles, and a lot of interior offensive linemen. So if your team is in dire need of that, you're really going to find it in this year's draft. Also breaking in news today, it appears that the Colts have issued a request to potentially introduce a new overtime rule that could possibly have both teams getting a chance to possess the ball. Now, of course, this comes after the controversial game against the Chiefs and the Bills, where we're basically shown just an amazing air raid show of the last 3 minutes, where it basically just went out without a whimper. And I've already gone on and said I don't have a problem with the overtime rule in effect. I don't really make a big deal about it because I think, at a professional level, you have to be held at a higher profession. But I understand what some people are coming for. I understand the fact that some people want to see everybody have a fair chance, especially in the overtime period. But the thing is, like I said, I really feel that there's nothing really consistently wrong with the overtime rule. It's easy to say that each team can get a chance to possess the ball. But looking at it from this perspective, is it really going to fix the problem, or is it going to cause another problem maybe down the road? And when I say this being the problem, it basically means, what if no one ends up winning and you get both teams potentially scoring at least 4 or 5 touchdowns each time they go? I mean, at what point does it become ludicrous? And you basically have to say, all right, maybe this is not a good idea. And it's one example. And really, I understand that there's a lot of other scenarios that can go with this rule, and I'm sure there's other things that they're going to hammer out. But basically, the new rule states that in the overtime period, that each team would get a possession and have an opportunity to score. Now, I think that's all right for that argument's sake, but like I said, you're going to have to hammer out some small things. Because with the new rule put in place, you're basically going to have to see if it's going to work long term for yourself. And the NFL is very hesitant about these things. They don't really enjoy kind of just testing little things out. And usually in scenarios like that, they end up kind of getting burnt. And hence, that's why the USFL and eventually the XFL and the USFL more than likely are probably going to be guinea pigs for this, which the XFL has already agreed to this. But I think it's a good rule to put in place. I don't think long-term wise that the NFL trying to change something that's not really broken is really going to fix this problem. And I say this basically just because when I watch professionals in their sport, I want to see them at the highest level they can get to. And it's easy to say everybody should get a chance to try and score. But that's the thing. I'm watching professionals at the highest level. In college, it's fine because these guys are trying to learn the game. We've seen it. They've learned it in high school. They've learned it in college when they have played it. But the thing is, where I'm arguing this point, it's basically a scenario of I want to see these guys excel at their profession. I'm paying the defense to stop the offense and get a field goal. You get them to a field goal, at least it's a situation that's manageable. And is everything in life fair? Of course not. That's why it's supposed to be life. It's supposed to be life, and basically, in general, just tell you that in these situations, you cannot get yourself in these situations where you're trying to get out of because you're in a bad jam. Now, I understand that everybody wants a fair shot, like I said, but at the same time, it is what it is. I'm fine with the rule as it is. And the NFL wants to try it out. They're more than welcome to try it out. But I do think that there's going to be a situation with this where it's going to kind of fall back and maybe just hurt them in the long run. But it's going to come down to a vote, and 25% of the owners are going to have to basically just say, we want this to work out, and we'll see what goes on. And I apologize if you hear the noise. That's just my daughter making noises in the background, so she's just putting in her 2 cents. And also in breaking news, for the draft in 2024, it appears that 3 finalists have been locked down, and it'll consist of Green Bay, Detroit, and Washington, D.C. And these are interesting choices. I think, especially D.C., I think the area itself, historically, with a lot of good football roots there, I think is very interesting in that perspective. And especially with a rebranding, I think that helps kind of sell that narrative. Green Bay, I'd say the same thing. A lot of historical football roots, a lot of great traditions there. I think, especially being in April, it's going to be fairly decent. So you're not going to have to worry about cold weather or anything. I think more likely, jacket weather at best. And Detroit, I'm not trying to be the guy that this is Detroit, but it's an interesting choice. Because, I mean, if anybody's been to Detroit, it's not a very glamorous city. There's not a lot of things to do outside of the main downtown area. So, you know, I think, money wise, I think it's a good move for Detroit, but they're going to have to do a lot of things in order to make this work. But I think out of the three, honestly, I'd like to see Green Bay have it. I think you've got a lot of great football tradition there, and I think more than likely the fans would show up and show out. And of course, I think the city of Green Bay can handle it. I mean, they handle regular season games, and I know it's going to be a more huge stage, basically, for the whole premise of it. But along those lines, I think Green Bay getting this would be great for them. I think it's a great setup long term, and, unfortunately, I don't see a Super Bowl ever happening in the area of Green Bay, but the draft, it's all right. I think that's a pretty good prize for them. I think that boosts their economy, and I think really along the lines it helps share the football passion that is Green Bay, Wisconsin. So that's my 2 cents on that. We'll just see who ends up getting it once we get down the road. And finally, as it was reported this morning, we have our two teams locked in for the Hall of Fame game August 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern, and it will be the Las Vegas Raiders and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And basically this will be the head coaching debuts of both Josh McDaniels and Doug Peterson. So I think there's the sell there. I think, you've got a young team that's already come off a playoff run, and you've got a younger team that's got a lot of potential with a young quarterback that may have a very high ceiling. We'll have to wait and see with that. But, preseason game, I mean, it gets attention, and it gets a pretty good crowd drawn in. So, along the lines, I think it's an all right choice. I mean, especially you kind of want to see how things are going to go starting out. I'm not going to make too big a deal about it because, it's a preseason game. But, the storyline, the two new head coaches, one team coming off the playoffs, one team that's still rebuilding, but has a lot of potential there. So I think it's a pretty good setup for both teams. So I think you'll get a pretty good crowd on there. I think more likely NBC is going to cover it. I haven't had a chance to check that, but along the lines, fairly decent game, fairly decent setup. We'll see what happens. I don't think it's a bad game. I think eventually the starters are going to get some reps in, especially on Jacksonville's side, because, Trevor Lawrence is going to have to get the learning experience, and that's how it is. Younger guys need these reps, and when you have an opportunity to get out there and try and evaluate your play and find out, especially the guys that are drafted around you and the talent that you've signed, Jacksonville's in a very unique position where they've got to figure out what kind of team they're going to be in the long run and what kind of team they want to be, especially when it comes to when the season starts. And the same will be said with the Las Vegas Raiders. Josh McDaniels is very much going to be locked in. He's going to have to figure out what his situation is and can the players mesh in his system. Now, of course, him coming off his first head coaching stint with Denver, it's going to be a lot of questions and naysayers, and that's fine. He rightfully deserved that, especially with a lot of reports that came out that there were a lot of questionable things that he was doing. So I can understand that. But for a preseason matchup and for the storylines that it sets up, I think you got a great setup here. I think it's a good chance for everybody to see what these teams are going to do with two new head coaches under the reins. It's not a bad scenario, and I'll just take it for what it is. So it's pretty good, and like I said, every time we'll just see how the game goes. And that's all you can do. Jump in on the comments real quick. Get to read a little bit. Elizabeth Bishop says hello. Hello, Mom. Lovely seeing you here tonight. Al Pierce. Well, Lou Man 7 says third, but, you got the time. Good to see you, Lou. Al Pierce says tighten up. Good seeing you. My daughter says hi, too. Lou also says hello, Big Mike and Peeps. He's definitely one of our more vocal guys on the show. We love having his opinions. He puts some pretty good takes on there, so it's always great hearing from Lou because He always brings the heat when he comes on the show, so he never disappoints. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, it's a big shakeup right now in the world of broadcasting, and everybody wants to know where everybody's going to end up. So I've come up with a few guesses. We'll sit down and break them all. I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30 seconds. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. So many great stories to get to, so much to do, but it's great that you took the time tonight just to sit and join me just talking football. And it's hard, especially in the off season, but I always try and bring the heat, and I try and bring you the stories that are going to be interesting to you, the fans. So whatever I can do to try and help your off season be a little more tolerable, I'm more than happy to try and make that be a little more excessive to you. So thank you for joining me tonight. And also, don't forget, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. I'm putting out daily videos on TikTok again, and I'll be bringing back my PowerPoints, which will be on every Tuesday and Friday. So check us out once again at the Power Hour 615. You don't want to miss it. That's good stuff. Well, all right, guys. It's basically a situation right now where the NFL is revamping the major broadcasting networks and the teams that call out the games. And this generally happens most of the time, usually about every decade or so. You know, most of the faces that we've seen areas of the game and on certain networks eventually end up moving or retiring. So we've seen a lot of that, especially the last few weeks, where Al Michaels seems to be leaving NBC, Troy Aikman seems to be leaving Fox, and so on and so forth. So I'm sure everybody has their own questions about what's going to happen, who's going to be doing what, and where's everybody going to end up? Well, I took a little time, and I felt it was a good scenario as of any right now to decide, with a huge off-season look looming, we're going to have new faces in new places. So, what are we going to do long-term, guys? We're going to see a lot of new teams, and we're going to see a lot of old familiar faces just in new areas and new networks. So, starting out, I think we'll start with the most basic one. And it would appear that Troy Aikman and Joe Buck seem to be leaving Fox, and will probably end up on ESPN with Monday Night Football. And I think this is a really good move. I think for the last really 4 years, ESPN's been trying to find stability in their broadcasting booth. And it's just come out empty. I think Manningcast was very successful, I think, along those lines. You know, I think it was a draw. I think with Peyton and Eli, I think they've got good chemistry. I think you have two very good football minds that continually just find a way to keep people interested. But along the lines, ESPN has lacked that certain appeal where they're trying to find two good personalities to put in the booth. And really along those lines, it's something that they've been missing since Mike Tirico left. And along the lines, I know a lot of people don't like Joe Buck, and that's fine. I mean, I can understand why. I mean, people think he's arrogant. People think he's a little, stiff in certain ways to say about NFL personalities. And some even think he's entitled. But I do still think the man does a good job at what he does. And having Troy Aikman along kind of helps put that in balance. I think the both of them have done very well at Fox. I think there's a reason why Fox continues to have some of the best draws, especially on why they get some of the major games in the afternoon slots. So it's a no-brainer here, and I think more than likely Joe Buck will follow Troy Aikman to ESPN. I think they'll pay him very handsomely. I think with Fox, it's a change of venue. A lot of great broadcasters end up moving to other networks. It's no surprise, and I think ESPN finally locks down their duo for Monday Night Football, and it's a very good one with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. I like this setup, and I think that's what's going to happen. But also, it sets up another interesting question for Sunday Night Football. Al Michaels leaving, and eventually Chris Collinsworth more likely could stay, but I think NBC wants to revamp. I think along those lines, Michaels and Collinsworth have been together for almost a decade. I won't say a full decade, but almost. But along those lines, you need change. And along that, I think right now, Tirico and Drew Brees at the moment would be a pretty good pairing for the Sunday Night Football booth. And interesting enough, I think along those lines, I've had a chance to watch them in some of their broadcasts, especially with some of the Notre Dame games, and even along the lines with some of the playoff games that they called, and they did fairly well. Mike Tirico's got a great voice. He's got a good personality, and I think Drew Brees is young and upcoming, but at the same time, you've got a good set of two individual personalities that bring a fresh perspective to Sunday Night Football, which has definitely needed that for the last few years. And that's not a knock on Al Michaels. Eventually, change is needed. And I think with Sunday Night Football, this gives a better perspective of what's needed. NBC paid a lot of money to get Mike Tirico from ESPN, knowing that eventually the Tirico is going to take the reins for Sunday Night Football. And with Chris Collinsworth, me personally, I've never enjoyed his work. I understand some people do. I think he's very bland. I think he can be vanilla even at times. But the thing is, when you're starting out bringing in a new play-by-play announcer, I think along the lines, you have to pair him with somebody that you know is going to get some pretty strong responses. And I think the best way is it's a clean slate for NBC. I think they're going to have to try engage just a new audience, especially for younger people coming in and watching the game. And I think Drew Brees can do the job. I think personality-wise, he's got a little bit of likability. I think he's done pretty well so far in the booth as a color commentator, but the thing is, he's going to continue to grow. And I think right now that's the best thing for him. I think you put him on a big stage, I think he'll do well. So I think, the team of Tirico and Brees is going to be the setup here for NBC for the for hopefully the next decade. That's the best move for them. And right now, the NFL and Fox is in an interesting situation. If both Joe Buck and Troy Aikman leave, there's a lot of other things they can do. One of the scenarios right now, I believe, Sean Payton's very much in deep conversations with Fox and Amazon at the moment. But I think for Fox, they've already got a pretty good duo that's sitting at the number 2 slot. And that would be of Kevin Bernhardt and Greg Olsen. And they're the number 2s at Fox. And they are very, very, very locked in together, personality-wise. If you've ever watched any of their broadcasting games, and any Titan fan, if you've ever had a chance to see him, more than likely would have been the Titan and 49er game. They do well. They do really good work. Greg Olsen, to me, is a rising star as a color commentator. I think along the lines, he keeps fans engaged. You have somebody that knows the game, and they both click. So, to me, I don't think Fox has to do anything major. I think they've already got their number 1, that they just have to elevate them. In situations like that, sometimes the answer you're looking for can tend to fall in your lap. And I look at them as how they call these games, the professionalism that they bring, and even the fun. I think Greg Olsen is just a delight to watch. I feel that he's going to continue to get better. And personality-wise, he still knows players in the game. He's still well-received in the league. And I think that's a very good selling point, especially when you're in the booth with a major network talking to players, talking about players, because you have that respect. And I think with Olsen, it's the right signing. I think with both of them, Fox doesn't have to go any further than just basically elevate them up to the main slot. So, will they do it? It's a big question right now because I think Fox definitely wants to continue to swing and hit the home run. Sometimes you got great role players on the bench. Put them in the starter spot, and they can elevate and shine. And I think this is the situation that Fox needs to do with both of them. Easy choice. Which leaves us now to my final destination. And the big question right now is Amazon Prime has spent a lot of money to acquire the NFL rights for Thursday Night Football. And it's pretty obvious that they want to hit this out of the park. Thursday Night Football has just not been what the NFL had hoped it would be. And since then, they've done everything they could do, from moving it from the NFL Network to moving it to opposing networks on a year-to-year basis, to let other broadcasters have it, to try and just bring out a little more appeal to it. So what can Amazon do to try and lock in an audience, knowing that they have to hit this out of the park? And that's easy. If you're Jeff Bezos, you're bringing in the best. And the best right now that I can picture working together would be Al Michaels and Tom Brady. And Al Michaels needs a change of scenery. It was no joke, and it was no coincidence that he was going to leave NBC. I felt that it was ready. It was the time that he was ready to just move on. And Michaels still has a passion to be a play-by-play announcer, and he loves doing it. He loves his job, and believe me, I don't see him retiring anytime soon. If he did, it'd be shocking. So, Amazon's got the money, and they're going to have the crew and the right people to put in place to make Michaels feel comfortable in this situation. Now, I know people are asking, why am I bringing Tom Brady in the booth as a play-by-play or a color analyst? And that's really simple. It's because Tom Brady's already been doing this, and you may have not known it already. For anybody that's ever listened to Westwood One's coverage of Monday Night Football games, Tom Brady generally calls in and usually does some play-by-play analysis of what they did during the week. And I've listened to it over the years, and Brady is very smart. He's very smooth in his transition, and the man is very engaging. And along those lines, that's what you need to be a color commentator. Now, will Brady want to do it? It's the big question. But he's already retired. There's already speculation saying that he would like to come back and play for two possible teams at this moment, which would very much want to have him, and that's going to be the waiting point. But at the same time, there's no other way that he can make any more money than he would if he decided to go into color commentating. And Amazon can pay him more than what an NFL owner would pay him. And you can say that's far-fetched, but believe me, Jeff Bezos has enough money to probably wrap the earth up maybe 4 times around. So if he wanted him, he could have him. And like I said, Brady has been doing this for already quite a while now. He's called into Westwood One and given color commentations and perspective of games. He's done this at the local radio station when he was with the Patriots with the Boston affiliate. So he's no stranger to talking about football or breaking down plays. He's done this before. So I think he'd be fine on the stage. I think along that lines, he'd definitely be a draw. And it's something that Amazon needs to get Thursday Night Football off the ground. When you invest this much in a product, you need this product to survive and to thrive. And with Thursday Night Football, you need Al Michaels, one of the best voices in the game right now. And you need Tom Brady, who's one of the most interesting and famous and infamous person to most football fans. Even if you hate Brady, I mean, people watch him. Numbers don't lie. And I think the pairing of both of them would be great for Amazon Prime, especially trying to establish their foot in the NFL world. because this is basically them saying, we're going to do whatever we can to be successful broadcasting NFL games and to be the first major streaming service to exclusively do NFL games on Thursday Night Football. It's no more back-to-back. It's no more via Fox or NBC or CBS. It's all Amazon Primes. And they need to hit this out of the park. And you have to have the best in the game to do it. And Tom Brady and Al Michaels would certainly bring a lot of interest there. And Lou Man brings up Tony Romo, and I don't think CBS doesn't have anything to worry about. Jim Nantz and Tony Romo, they're happy at CBS. I haven't heard anything from any of my guys or anyone else really that's made any kind of speculation that Romo wants to go elsewhere or even that Nance wants to go anywhere. I'm pretty sure CBS would be more than happy to give them an extension or whatever they were looking for along those lines. So I don't think you've got to worry too much about that, Lou Man. But in the case of Al Michaels and Tom Brady, like I said, they've got a hit. I think that's your winning combination right there. I think along those lines, you're basically setting yourself up for success in the long run, something that the NFL has been dying to get their hands on ever since they have established this. So along that, you have to try and make this work. The NFL's tried for nearly over a decade and a half to make this work, and as frustrating as it has been for them, I think these are the two key players right here that's going to make all the difference in the world there. And Lou Man also brings up a good point. Thursday Night Football won't be on TV no more. And if you have an Amazon Prime account, basically what's going to happen, they're going to be playing all the Thursday Night Football games. So, unfortunately, Lou Man, Thursday Night Football will be on Amazon Prime exclusively, but if you already have Amazon Prime or Amazon Video subscription, basically you're all right. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. And he says, what channel Amazon TV on? Basically, if you have Prime Video, all you have to do is just log on to that, and whenever the game is, they'll have it on there. And I'm pretty sure they'll have a pregame show just like Fox, NBC, and CBS do. They've already established a crew. So I think along those lines, they're basically just setting up for what they would be doing just like on Sunday football. So more than likely, it's basically what Prime's going to be doing. But if you have Prime Video and you're already subscribed to it, I think you'll be okay. So no worries there. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and when I come back, we'll do a mock draft. And I know you all are probably tired of mock drafts, but we got to do something while the draft's getting ready to happen. I'm Michael Bishop of the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining on this Monday evening. It's great to have everybody watching the show tonight, and don't forget, once again, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. And don't forget, I'll be bringing back my PowerPoints on TikTok every Tuesday through Friday. You don't want to miss them. I'll always have an opinion on all the NFL news stories going on as the week progresses. Well, all right, guys. Jumping in, let's go ahead and look at my latest NFL mock draft. And I know, oh Lord, he's doing another draft. We're going to be doing a few of these before April hits, so I know I'm not the only one, but everybody's going to have an opinion on the draft, so let's get to it. So once again, our way too early mock draft for the 2022 season, and I stayed busy. I felt this time around I needed to do some trading. So big thanks to Pro Football Fantasy for doing this draft with me, and I'll share them out there. It's at www.pff.com if you would like to do a mock draft. They have a lot of player profiles that you can do and basically check out if you want to try that while you're waiting for the draft. They also have some videos on players if you want to receive any more info on that. They've been really pretty good about doing just interactive stuff. So check it out if you get the opportunity to. And they're not sponsoring me. I'm just giving them a free plug. But getting back to my mock draft, I knew I had to try and trade back into the second round. I felt you were going to have a lot of talent fall a little later, so first up, the Giants wanted 26 and 203. So I went ahead and took that for 37, 69, and 109, adding a second round pick, a second, third round pick, and a fourth round pick in my draft arsenal. Not too bad. But then Denver called and was interested in number 37, leaving me to say, well, I'll do it if you give me 2 years at 41 and 64, and I also want your round 3 pick in 73, which they rightfully agreed. So let's go ahead and show you who I went after with pick 41. And to set the scenario up right now, I know it's going to be vital to try and re-sign Harold Landry. So in all my drafts, I have to come up with a scenario where Tennessee has to try and fill needs. And usually one of the first draft picks that they take is to fill a huge need. And unfortunately, in this scenario, I don't think Landry gets re-signed. So I have to find a replacement at the edge position. So who was on the board but Jermaine Johnson from Florida State? I have watched a lot of film on this kid, and I love everything that he has. And it would be surprising if he even falls to 41. His speed and his field vision is phenomenal. The fact that he can get to the ball carrier and get them down with ease, that he can get moves past the offensive line, he is just a dangerous young man with a lot of potential and even more untapped potential from what I've seen in the films. One thing that I do think he needs to work on, sometimes he does get caught up. If he gets locked on by an offensive lineman, it's hard for him to break off. So generally a lot of his moves are from the outside, and once he does get that burst of speed, he makes the difference there. So there is some things he does need to work on, but I do feel he's the perfect fit and the perfect replacement if Harold Landry leaves. So that fills the need there. But moving on to round of 2, I decided to stay with defense. And Leo Channel is one of the best inside linebackers in the draft, in my opinion. I love the fact that he has a burst of speed. I love the fact that he hits and wraps up the player. Leo is one of those kids that you just see film on and you know he's going to be a difference maker. I think he has the potential to start, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did come in as a backup role. But I think in Tennessee's situation with linebacker, you do have Jayon Brown, you do have, Rashaan Evans that are basically going to be possibly victims of leaving in free agency. So you've got to fill up those slots, and I think Channel is basically one of those guys that takes one of those jobs. But like I said, his speed is phenomenal. The fact that he gets to the ball carrier and takes him down with authority, this kid has a lot of potential, and anybody that is a defensive coordinator is dying to get to work with him. So I love him at this spot. If Tennessee manages to get a second round pick, and if he's on the board, he can be a difference maker at that position. And then at pick 69 with the third round pick, I had to address the wide receiver position because right now I feel Tennessee needs another slot guy. But Sky Moore to me is a very interesting player. And the fact that he continues to rise up on some other draft boards just shows how skillful he is. I think if he has a very strong combine, you could potentially see him move up to the second round. I love the fact that he is able to beat his one-on-one matchups. He is very aggressive getting downfield, and he is very good at getting his hands on the ball. He moves quick, and he thinks quicker. This is the kind of wide receiver you need that can be a difference maker. And along the lines where Tennessee is trying to find a situation where they need a wide receiver other than Julio Jones and A.J. Brown to be a playmaker. And even with Westbrook and Keenum leaving possibly in free agency, I think you need to find a replacement for him. Sky Moore, to me, is a guy that can step up in that role and is more than likely going to be the difference maker here. But Tennessee having another third-round pick through the trade. And Brian Asamoah is very, very interesting in this spot. Once again, I think another need of position where Tennessee has to do something to lock down another linebacker. And I know people are like, well, Mike, there's other needs of positions that need to be addressed. But here's the thing. Some of these guys are going to be resigned. Some of these guys are going to be difference makers. Some of these guys are going to be special teams players. Brian Asamoah is going to be a special teams player. But here's why. I think eventually he can get elevated to the defense. Maybe in about a year or two. He is a great attacker of the ball. He is a great mind for the game. And he has a lot of potential as a starter. But he's raw. I think along those lines, he is quick to get to the ball carrier. He has a very good sense of getting upfield to get to the ball. And you need somebody that is going to make big plays, not only on the defense, but on special teams, which he has done. So along those lines, you fill two needs, somebody that can play in a backup role, but also potentially be a starter on special teams, which is vital in this time to get yourself a key player that could elevate themselves to the defense. Then moving on to our next third-round pick, I have to do something because I feel Saffold is eventually going to be one of those casualties when it comes to cuts. It's a lot of money to pay a guard, and eventually Tennessee is going to have to find a replacement here. And Dylan Parham from Memphis is a little undersized, but he fights and he plays with a tenacity and a toughness that I think is unmatched. And I had a chance to watch a lot of his highlights in the Senior Bowl, and he did pretty well. You can tell that he's really putting himself, he anchors himself down, he wins his matchups, but believe me, they go after him, and he stood and he took the test, he took the beating. You know, there's going to be knocks on his size, but the thing is, the kid's 300 pounds, and he's still able to basically put one-on-one matchups with guys that are 6'4" and 6'5". Now, Al Pierce brings up a pretty good point. Yes, he can actually play center, which he has taken some snaps. So that could be a potential starting position there for him as well. So he can play guard or center. Some scouts have said that he could fill in at the center position if he was willing to make that change. And I think with the Titans, they like having versatile offensive linemen. I think you have to have guys that are willing to play two spots, especially knowing that with an extra game, there's the potential of injuries, and you have to reshuffle guys. Now, of course, along those lines, I have no doubt that Mike Vrabel and John Robinson can't find offensive line talent outside of the draft through undrafted free agency, through players floating around and being released from other teams. Those are scenarios that come up. But if I have an opportunity to find a guy that can basically be just a wall and help elevate this run game, I like Dylan Parham right here. I think he's going to be a very good addition to this team if this draft plays out the way I hope it does. And then moving on to our later picks, going into the fourth round, I know everybody knows Tennessee has to find tight end help. And getting Cole Turner at pick 109 is going to change the entire offense. Tennessee lacked that safety blanket that Ryan Tannehill desperately needed, especially when he had to play without Julio Jones and A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. Tannehill did enough. And unfortunately in the playoffs, that wasn't the case. We needed somebody that could have been a little more dynamic and help move the ball. Cole Turner is tall, athletic, and he can fight for the catch. In all the film that I've watched over Cole Turner, he impresses me with his way that how he gets after the ball, how he wins his battles one-on-one, and the fact that he is always finding a way to get open. Tennessee desperately needs that. And I know Michael Pruitt, if he gets healthy again, I'm pretty sure they'll re-sign him. Swaim, if he stays healthy, is not a starter, but I do feel along those lines is a good blocking tight end. And Anthony Firkser, the jury's out. You know, he's there when you need him, but at some point, he isn't, if that makes sense. So, of course, Tennessee needs to find a playmaker at this position. And Cole Turner, to me, is a huge reason why Carson Strong had so much success at the quarterbacking position with Nevada. I mean, if you have a chance to look at his highlights, Cole Turner is all over the field. He breaks away and gets open. Tennessee needs a guy that can break away and get open. They need that safety valve. They need that guy that can be a playmaker. Cole Turner is a steal here at 109. And then at 128, I've got to try and do something with the running back position. I don't have a lot of questions that can be answered at this point. Are we going to stay with Deontay Foreman? Is Hillard going to be part of the plans going forward? Darrington Evans may be a casualty to be cut. I need a running back that can probably be a difference maker, not only on the offensive side of the ball, but potentially somebody on special teams. And Zovan Bam Knight is that answer. And Knight has just an amazing burst of speed. When he gets the ball in his arms and he takes off, it's like watching a rocket take off. His burst of speed is unmatched to a lot of the running backs that I've seen so far. One of the things I think is underrated about him is the fact that I think he's going to be underlooked by his size and just potentially on his stats. But unfortunately, where I've had a chance to watch a lot of his film, this kid's got a huge burst of speed. He's got great vision downfield. He's got very quick feet, and he's very agile. He can make guys miss at ease. So if I'm Tennessee, I need somebody that can give Derrick Henry a breather, but also be a difference maker. And Al Pierce brings up a good point. Good hands. Yes, Al. He can catch the ball. But not only can he catch the ball, he's played on the kickoff team. So he's returned kickoffs as well. And he's done very well with that. In fact, I could potentially see Tennessee also using him as a kickoff returner. Maybe even a punt returner. He has the speed. He has the field vision. It's almost like watching Darian Sproles. That's the only comparison I can give to Zohan Bam Knight. It's like watching a younger Darian Sproles. He's quick. He moves fast. He makes guys miss. Moving on to our next fourth round pick. And I feel, of course, with Ben Jones, I think he'd sign a shorter term deal. And along those lines, it's a situation where I feel it's necessary to make sure that in those situations that we have somebody that's going to have a chance to get to be an understudy. And Alex Lidstrom's coming in at this position. I think you take the chance going with him right now, especially since you don't have a lot of lower draft picks. But, you know, tremendous blocker. He moves quick. He moves people with ease. And I think along the lines, if he could put on maybe about another 10 or 15 pounds, he'd be an even more dangerous force in the NFL than he was in college. So with his film, there's not a lot I can look at, but what I have looked at, I like his feet work. I think if he can continue to work and get stronger with his hand work, it's a situation with the right coach. I think he's basically going to have a chance to be a starter with somebody. But he does have some things he needs to polish. But definitely worth a pick here at 4. And then finally finishing in the 5th round with our final pick since we decided to trade out, I am once again throwing my hat in for Cameron Dicker the kicker. Yes, I'm going with this kid. I love everything about him right now. It seems like every year in the draft, especially the last 4 years, I've generally looked at kickers quite a lot more. And Cameron Dicker to me is the best of both worlds that you could have. The kid's punted if he wanted to be a punter, and in his 4 years at Texas, 60 for 79, 206 out of 210 attempts. You know, those are solid numbers for somebody that started 4 years or a college team. So Cameron Dicker has the leg, and along the lines, he is basically, in his career long, hit a 57-yard field goal once. So he can hit it through 50. So I think right now, this is one of the situations and one of the positions you need to shore up and lock down for the long haul. So if I'm the Titans, go for it. Sometimes you got to take a chance. The Cincinnati Bengals took a chance and it paid off for them. I think Tennessee has the same opportunity here. As much as I like the addition of Bullock, I think you need somebody younger. And I think right now, Dicker the kicker needs to be a Tennessee Titan. And Al Pierce, he punts too. Yes, he punts. He actually punted for, I believe it was a season. So Dicker the kicker stayed busy all over every chance that he got. All right, guys, I'm going to take a quick 30-second break. And when I come back, we'll talk a little bit about the Ukraine situation going on right now. And especially we'll talk about one of our own that's over there, basically just trying to face the adversity that his family and him are going through right now. So we'll take a quick 30-second break. And when I come back, we'll just talk about it for a minute and just get it all out in the open. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour, and we'll be back in 30. As the new NFL season dawns upon us, Tennessee Titan fans have the ultimate desire, and that desire is to see their team hoist the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season. And through it all, we expect a lot of great highs and maybe even a little lows. But it all comes to one thing, that we all love the two-tone blue. And going forward, fans are looking for something fresh, something new, something exciting. Looking for a show that's going to give you all the stats, highlights, and accolades that you're looking for? Well, it's time to jump into the new revolution. That is the Power Hour. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. It's great to have everybody here. I'm very pleased that you've joined me on the show tonight. And before we go, I definitely had a quick piece that I wanted to do just to basically show to our friends out there, especially in the Ukraine area, that you're not forgotten and that we are trying to do whatever we can, especially over here, in a peaceful way to try and help transition you in these harder times and in these bad of situations. So I figured in this situation, it's just good to vent and especially just talk about the situation going up. So in their native tongue, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes, and they very much deserve this praise and admiration that they're going through right now, especially in these hard times. And it's not trying to put a political spin on the show, but it's the human nature of this show. I'm trying to share with you all, and with a situation that's been going on, that it's just been frustrating and angering and just unbelievable at the point where sometimes you just don't have words for it. And I think it's just good to talk about it just for a moment, and especially just vent the situation at hand. So, we've all seen the images of what's been going on with Ukraine. We know that Vladimir Putin has basically sicked Russia basically on Ukraine, trying to claim it for his own, just very much as the will of a selfish man in these selfish times, what someone would do and try and take advantage of people in this situation. And it had been going on for years, and most people don't understand why it's happening now. It's basically because it's a complicated political matter. And I guess really the easiest way you can answer it or even just describe it, it's basically someone that's angry at a country that broke away long ago and is trying to basically put claims on it. Would be the best scenario that I could put it in. But along those lines, it's the will of selfish men enacting their rights on something that they don't have power over or authority over in the first place. And through all it, we've seen horrific images, but also we've seen the bravery of the Ukrainian people going out there and trying to handle their own, take care of their own, and show the world that they're not going to buckle under these severe pressures and threats of just terrorism, hate, and just fear. So it's very frustrating that we can't do more than what's going on right now because of everything that's tied to it. But along the lines, there have been sanctions been put in place, but at the same time, there's people that want done more, and there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and a lot of questions that aren't being answered. But in these situations, all we can do is just keep them in our thoughts and prayers, and just continue just to hope that see the best of what humanity brings in these scenarios. And what we've seen is the Ukrainian people stand together and unite under someone that has basically tried to put just an act of terrorism into their country and basically show that they're not going to be bullied, they're not going to be told what they can and can't do, and they're not going to be pushed around by somebody that isn't even involved in their country. And you've seen people, even with Ukrainian roots, and even athletes at this point go and help defend their country. And the admiration and the respect that I have for them is at the highest level that I can give. And we definitely hope that this is something that'll prevail through, and that there's many families that are going through losses and are having to leave things behind, even leave loved ones behind just to make sure that they're safe. And it's unfortunate that the hatefulness and the anger that goes through all this, that these are the times that we live through. But we do see good in it. And I wanted to bring this up because as Titan fans, we try to look after our own. And I think it's very important, especially in these times of need and desperation and hurt. And that's what a lot of these Ukrainian people are going through. And one of our very own, and I know if you haven't been following his story on Twitter, this is Ed O'Reilly. And Ed is basically a huge Titans fan. And right now he is in Ukraine, where he is basically trying to escape. And luckily, through just a lot of goodwill through people and a lot of great moments that have had people stand up and help his family get out of the country. Right now, I'm grateful to say that they are in Romania and they are safe for the moment. And basically, they are leaving everything behind and trying to find somewhere in some way to try and just get through this tough times. And he's been very active on Twitter, letting everybody know that he and his family are safe. This is one of the earliest ones that I was able to get a hold of. But he said at that time again, update, we have left the border town and heading to Budapest, where we will spend a birthday. After that, it is on to Germany, where German Titans, which is Titans fan base, has generously offered to put him and his family up, so they'll be there at 11. So we thank German Titans, especially for his hospitality and just his goodwill nature for looking after the family right now. It's a very good story right now to continue to follow, that all the Titans fans are doing whatever they can to try and help Eddie and his family in these times of just desperation and just uncertainty. And one of the other ones that is doing what they can to help, and I definitely want to make sure I give her a shout out here. And one of our active followers, Haley, on HeyBay42 on Twitter, basically came out and said, "Hey Titans Twitter, in order to help Eddie O'Reilly and his family with the ongoing needs that will be involved in relocating and to reach out more people, she's created a GoFundMe page and to please share." And Al Pierce brings that up also, that his GoFundMe page is now at $6,319, and that is a fantastic news. So I urge anybody watching the show tonight, if you can give anything, or if you're in a position to give, or you're willing or wanting to give, I will leave the GoFundMe page information on the top of the show after it's ended. I will make sure that that is there along with the show for you to visit. Give whatever you feel that you can give, or if you want to give. It's hard times for everybody. And in these situations, sometimes we bring out the best in everybody. It's hard to see people, especially families, in these positions where they fall into hard times that they weren't asked to fall into. Especially when it comes to other selfish people trying to enact their rules upon other people for selfish wants and desires. And it's unfortunate that that is the situation. But for Eddie and his family, we're very fortunate, and we're very happy that they're safe in Romania. We're very happy that they're moving forward to Germany and trying to find a plan to basically just do whatever they have to do to try and continue their lives, whatever they decide. But they have all of Titan Nation's support. They have Titan Twitter support. And, of course, they have my support and my fan base's support. So I will make sure that this is put on my page after the show is over. If you feel the need to give, if you wish to give, join the GoFundMe page. Give what you can. Do what you can. It's the best of humanity that brings us out and where we can shine in situations for our friends. You don't have to give to be a better person. But in your heart, if you can make a difference, especially for someone who's trying to do anything they can after such a tragic, terrifyingly loss of giving up everything just to be safe. As members of the human race, it's important that we embrace each other in these moments, and we can show what the best of all of us can do when the ones that we care about and the ones that matter the most fall in these times. Even if we never meet, even if we never have a chance to speak to one another. We never wish this on anyone. We never want to see anyone go through this. And for Eddie and his family, we want to make sure that they're safe and they can find a way, especially after a lot of hard decisions are going to have to be made. So we continue to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. Please stay safe. Excuse me. Please stay safe. And just know that you are cared for. And we will look after you as long as we have a voice to, and as long as we have the needs to. And guys, thank you for joining me on the show tonight. It's been wonderful once again. I appreciate you for coming on every time that I get a chance to put a show on Monday. I definitely want to make sure that you leave feeling a little better about things. And just know, even through the hardest of times and the bad times, we can all take fact and we can take solace in knowing that they'll never last forever and they'll never endure. But it's the things like this that help our character grow. So just remember, no matter what happens, strength, love, endurance, and honor are always key focal points. And I want to thank everybody for joining on the show. So, Al Pierce, thank you for joining us, buddy. Once again, thank you, friends. Tighten up and go Titans. Kick massive tail /Oilstruck. Great show, Michael. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for being on. Lou Man, thank you for being on. Love having you on here. Always great having everybody on here. So I want to wish everybody a good night. Thank you once again. And don't forget, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at the Power Hour 615. And don't forget, I'll be revamping the PowerPoints on Twitter. So every Tuesday and Friday, make sure you join. You don't want to miss it. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour. Take care. Tighten up. Have a good night. Thank you for watching the Power Hour. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more content. And you can also follow